Today, are you ready, Marie?
You bet.
Okay. Today are, as many of you know, the city has been struggling with, what is it Mr. Wanamaker calls it, Mount Lemon or Mount Garbage or something there. And as all of us drive by Lemon Creek, we can see the accomplishment that we've been able to make, and so the city has taken it upon themselves to do something about it, and I compliment them for that. And so at this time, Maria is going to come up and introduce our guest speakers and give us an outline of what's been being accomplished. And with that, I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you to the Chamber for inviting us. We look forward to the opportunity to get this information to as many people as possible. My name is Maria Glidashevsky. I'm a Special Projects Officer for the City and Borough of Juneau. I've had the pleasure of, over the last year, to be working on this project, among others, of course. But over a year ago, a couple years ago, spurred on by the closing of the incinerator and also other issues at the landfill, citizens began calling their assembly members, and solid waste was on their mind. I didn't realize this was going to turn into true confessions today about your garbage. That was fun. But you and everyone else in the city, city residents have seen the growing landfill with the closing of the incinerator, and people began to be concerned and started lobbying their assembly members for the city to get involved. And so having little history with solid waste, the city does not run or operate or own the landfill, nor does it operate or own the trash hauling, as you know. The city decided to hire some outside experts to come in and help us and examine what could the city of Juneau do to affect its solid waste future. The city has long had goals in its comprehensive plan and various planning documents about integrated solid waste management, about increased recycling, and basically has a difficult time affecting that in that it doesn't own the landfill, doesn't haul the waste. So, and there's interest in the community in a new landfill, in maybe having another incinerator, and those sorts of things. So we brought in a couple of folks, Richard Hertzberg and Chris Bell, been working in the industry for 30 years for Richard, and a little bit shorter for Chris. And been working over the past year on this issue. Also involved has been a solid waste working group, a group of citizens and also some city employees to work with Chris and Richard and work through the issue comprehensively. Marcy Larson is one of the people on that group, the solid waste working group, as is Dave Hanna, people that you know, Dave Hanna, Nancy Waterman, David Stone, Assemblymember David Stone, Joe Buck, the Public Works Director, myself, Cynthia Johnson, who worked on this issue a decade ago. So there's, and Gretchen Kaiser as well. Been working on this, have met 4 times with Richard and Chris, have had 2 public meetings, one in August, one last night. There was a great interest in this issue. Over 60 people came in August. I didn't have enough handouts. And there were about 35 people there last night. High interest. The city conducted a phone survey in connection with its comprehensive plan and asked what things would you like to see changed in Juneau, and there was no prompting, people just top of mind. The second thing on people's mind was increased recycling. So there's a tremendous interest in it. So that's the background context for what you'll hear from Richard. And there's handouts on your table if you need more. I have another pile. So without further ado, Richard Hertzberg.
Can everybody hear me okay?
No.
No.
Okay. Quick answer. The presentation we're going to make to you this afternoon is exactly the same one you have in the handout. So we're going to move through it as expeditiously but as completely as we can. And if you could hold your questions and comments till we're done, that would be appreciated. And we're going to try and leave as much time as possible. Basically, the way we see our role is to provide you with an outside technical objective analysis and to try and make it as comprehensive as possible. And in order to do that, what look at is the basic parts of your solid waste program or your solid waste system. And that consists essentially of 6 elements that we portrayed up here on the screen. The collection part, the disposal part, recycling, promotion, administration, and any transfer of trash from one place to another. As Maria mentioned, excuse me, we work closely with the private sector players involved. That's going to be Waste Management and Aero Refuse, with the working group, with the staff from the Borough, and with other interested parties that are represented on the working group. What we try and do is basically analyze the situation, gather background information, that's the preliminary stage, look at what the options are, put together our recommendations and present them to you. What are some of the basic facts that are kind of the basis for our perspective? You've got about 30 to 33,000 tons per year that are going into the landfill. Of that, 24,000 tons is pretty predictable regular garbage from businesses and homes, and the rest of it varies from year to year because it's mainly construction and demolition debris. You've got about 30 years of capacity at the landfill left. Some other factors that obviously you're aware of: Juneau's an isolated city. Everything that is consumed here pretty much comes in from outside. Recyclables have to be shipped down to Seattle to various private facilities that are located there, which is what's going on now. The gentleman mentioned earlier the population. You have a very stable population, which means the amount of trash you're generating is not growing that much. The consequences of that are that from a private sector investment point of view, in the garbage world and the recycling world, you're just not, frankly, a very attractive target. There's not enough material here for an outside investor, an outside company to come in and make the sort of commitment over the long term. The profit is just not there. The companies that are here already have a stake in the system, but attracting other interested parties we think would be very difficult from an economic point of view. As Maria mentioned, the Borough has no operating experience in solid waste. It pretty much contracts for 3 sets of services now, and has a very limited role. There is a strong interest in recycling, obviously, and some of the other contracted services for the household hazardous waste, automobiles, and obviously the recycling center. Your current recycling, we've summarized here at the bottom. Some of you may not know, but the landfill is actually recycling a fair amount of scrap metal that comes in there. You've got the automobiles, and then about 1,300 to 1,500 tons per year coming through the recycling center. That's essentially the current status. Oops. We look for what the strong parts of your system are and what the weak parts are. We don't know how serious Juneau wants to be about recycling. Probably through this process we're going to find out fairly soon. We know there's a lot of interest. So our perspective is to recommend to you a strategy that has low risk and leaves you some flexibility for the future, but addresses what the main priorities are. The basic dilemma that we see is kind of as Maria stated. There's a lot of interest, a lot of expectation, a lot of desire to have involvement in solid waste, but the Borough itself has basically no role. And the reason is that there's this entity called the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, which probably most of you are aware of, the RCA. Aero Refuse is essentially doing business under the regulations of the RCA. It has a certificate of public convenience and necessity, that's what it's called. And so its rates, its operating terms and conditions are set by the RCA, not by the Borough. Similarly, the Borough has no contractual or formal relationship with the disposal entity, Waste Management. The disposal site, the property there is owned by Waste Management. It's entirely a private operation. Essentially, the last point there, there's a great desire to do something, but no foundation or mechanism to do anything.